Hello. This is going to be the second language myth in my final project video. So here we go. All right. So language myth. They speak really bad English down south and in New York City. Well, first off, we have the what and the who of the myth. The what is in the South and in places like New York, the way they speak is not proper English. So who would think this? Anyone who doesn't speak that particular dialect of English would think this. There's a lot of stereotypes, and if you're not a part of that stereotype, more than likely you've heard that stereotype, and that's what you're going to think. So why do people think this? Well, people often think that their dialect that they speak is superior to others. Higher status groups often impose their language on others and other things. And the South is often thought to be very rural, and there's a stereotype that rural areas are populated by uneducated, lazy people like farmers. This stereotype and thought process is still in our society today, unfortunately, and not much can be done to change it other than a very large ideological shift in our world. But unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult. So, how does the book debunk this? Well, the book states that Southerners suffer from something called linguistic insecurity. And this is that they feel insecure about their own language and lack self-confidence. The book then goes on to cite multiple studies as to how a certain person feels that their language is superior than the other. So there's multiple studies done in Michigan from samples of people in Michigan and samples of people, I think, in Alabama. And what they were tasked with doing was rating whether or not they spoke correct English in this state on a scale of 1 to 7. And not surprisingly, they rated their region and the way that region speaks is very high and the regions around them lower. And this makes sense as people will more than likely take pride in the way they speak and defend themselves. And most likely they don't think they're a part of that stereotype. So going into the language files for this, language file states in their language variation chapter that no two speakers of a language speak exactly the same way, nor does any individual speak the same way all the time. So depending on who you're speaking to, you're going to change your word choice, your tone, etc. So for example, if you speak to your friends versus you speaking to your grandparents, you're going to pick different words. My mom likes to say, don't use your friend words around me. It's kind of funny. But variation also occurs in different regions. So, for example, there's a Midwestern dialect, there's an East Coast dialect, a West Coast dialect, and Southern dialect. And there is something called the Standard American English, and that is the standard dialect of English in America. But this dialect is not based on pronunciation, but rather grammar. So even though a person may have a Southern accent or New York accent, whatever, if they're speaking with proper grammar, it's not bad English. The book then goes on to argue that speakers of non-standard varieties are considered lazy, uneducated, and sometimes they're even told they won't be successful unless they learn to speak the other language dialects. This is just a stereotype, and like most stereotypes, they aren't true. Just because you speak a different way doesn't mean you can't be really good at math, you can't be really good at science, English, whatever. It's just the way you speak is determined based off the people around you. Plenty of smart people have come from Southern accents in places like New York. And plenty of smart people have also come from places in the North. So there's not a lot of evidence to claim that. So going back to the Lynch Files chapter on language change that I talked about in my last video, As I mentioned, there is no rule as to what qualifies a good language and what qualifies a bad language. Languages are a part of our culture, and who is to say one culture is bad and another is good? So you can't say the Southern language is bad and Northern is good. You can't. There's no rules that govern this, so it's just, like I said earlier, it's just an opinion. And opinions are just opinions. They can't be taken as facts. So I have some evidence from outside. So there was a study done with young children in which a small video clip was played of people speaking with a northern accent and people speaking with a southern accent. And this video clip was showed to children from the north and from Tennessee. And they were asked to select which one they would like, which of the two accents of people they would like to be friends with. And to no surprise, the northern children picked the accent of the north, and the children from Tennessee had no preference. So this is the same concept as in the language myth book, that people tend to evaluate their language as superior to others, and they're going to want to align themselves with that. The same study also followed up by asking children who do you think was smarter or in charge in these small video clips, and the northern children selected the northern video clip dialect group, and the children from Tennessee selected the children from Tennessee had no preference. And this just confirms that there is a stereotype that those who speak Southern English are bad at English, and that it truly does exist in the world, unfortunately. And stereotypes, unfortunately, are just instilled onto us at a young age, and although we try to combat this, subconsciously they'll reappear and cloud our judgment. So that's all I have. I think it's been a great semester, and thanks for watching.